Hello, everybody. Welcome to AllertonHave.com. I am Jason Hornacki, and I'm joined today by Tristan Wisher, and we are doing a talkback for Tristan's review of Fantastic Four. It was a bit of a, I don't know, controversial review
That's why I do them.
because this is the first review on AllertonHave.com to get a score of 1
Hey, there had to be
of
something to get
anything,
one, right?
games, movies, anything we've ever reviewed. This is the first thing to ever get an official number 1. So, Tristan, let's not beat around the bush. Like, quickly, sum up how and why you think this movie is a 1.
Why do I think it's a one? Well, I didn't. I mean, watching the movie, I kept thinking, oh, something's really good's gonna happen pretty soon, and then they did something cool, and then they just sidestep and go in reverse and change what they just did into something entirely different. So I
Okay,
feel
you
like
need
I,
to
I got
expand on this because this was like a central theme in your review, and this was something I didn't really get that much from
all
the
right.
movie, and you mentioned
Well,
it multiple times.
case in point, Doom or Victor Von Doom. Before he became Doom, that character, and they even before they even showed him, they explained like, oh, we wouldn't want him because last time he was around us, he blew stuff up and destroyed our lab and whatnot. And then Franklin Storm goes to him for help, and their entire conversation. First of all, his little lair where he's got like remote controlled blinds. I don't know what that was all about, but
He's like a scientist. I mean, that was just like evil bad
yeah.
guy, like creepy layer. I mean, that made perfect sense to me. It was,
And And then Franklin's like, "Oh, come on, help us out." And he's like, "I don't want to. I don't trust those people at the Baxter Institute and blah blah blah." And he's like, "What? Is Sue gonna be working on this? Because if Sue's working on it, I'm all in." Like, and
But I mean, that makes sense. Like, he's got a thing for Sue. Like, he wants to be
yeah,
around her,
but
and
that
he's the only other guy besides Reed Richards that built this machine. Like, he built this machine. So it's like he built it with
and
his,
his
he
and his
knows
didn't
it.
and Victor's never worked though. Like,
But Victor clearly wanted to make this thing work, and then when they told him that someone else did it, like you could see in his face, like, oh shit, like this is bullshit that someone else is going to do it. So there's that motivation. Then the motivation
but he
for
seems to have
the
such
girl.
hatred for the Baxter people and the government because they've destroyed the Earth so much, and now they want to go into this alternate dimension and use the resources for that for their own purposes. It didn't make sense to me on why he would help them out though, and
Because
then even
he wanted to go to that place. I thought it was really clear, like he wanted to make this thing work, and then go to the planet, and then whatever happened when he got there, good or bad, I never felt like this dude ever
so
wanted to come
was
back.
it his grandmaster plan the entire time to do
I
what he did?
I mean, they never made it super clear, but they meant vaguely. I thought kind of mentioned it multiple times that he thought the Earth was like dying and we were killing the Earth and the
Yeah,
Earth
I
didn't
mean,
deserve to be around anymore and all. He like made all these subtle things. I didn't think that was ever like backtracking on the character. Like it wasn't like against who he was. Like that kind of stuff.
and
I
then his motives as Doom didn't make sense also because he wanted to protect Earth so bad. Like he was against people destroying Earth. So why would he then want to destroy it himself?
I don't remember. I guess I don't remember him saying like he was against people destroying Earth. He just said people destroyed Earth. Like people treated it like shit, so it was like deserved to die or whatever.
Well, yeah, he was mad at those Baxter people for wanting to use Planet Zero's resources,
But then
which is
like the whole final third of the movie with Doom and destroying like not that is like the worst part of the movie that didn't make any sense to me. But the beginning of the movie I felt was fine, and you mentioned
right. And
early
Reed as a
on,
kid,
yeah,
that
like
was a
Reed.
whole nother storyline. Like with him as a kid, he's in school. I understand as a kid, his teacher might doubt him, like, oh, he's making up crazy stories and his fantastic and
Yeah, he's
his
like 10
flying
years
car
old,
or whatever. I think he was. They said he was
11,
12 at the time,
yeah, or something.
but I forgave it the first time when his teacher laughed it off and everyone else in class laughed at him. Like, fine, whatever. And then they got to the science fair 7 years later as an 18-year-old, and I'm assuming he was ready to graduate high school. And the teacher just like still doesn't understand his experiment, and he saw it firsthand and was like, ah, it's a magic trick. Like, it,
I felt there's nothing wrong with that. That was just like typical comic book movie bullshit. They do the same thing in like Spider-Man and everything. It's always like this weird suspension of disbelief and like this weird like one kind of.
Well, that's the thing. They weren't trying to make a comic book movie. They're trying to make a big sci-fi movie. So if you want to go down the sci-fi route, it didn't make sense as a sci-fi movie.
I mean, either way, it worked to do what it needed to do, which was to bring the Baxter people in, and it was a good way to do it as if they were like watching him and they knew about him or they knew about
And
this
one
thing.
point I did bring up in my review, if these Baxter people were working on this way before Reed even started, and then Reed's been working on it for the last 7 years, why does it take 7 years for these guys to come around and bring him in as an 18-year-old? Why didn't they recruit him as a kid, like they had Victor as a kid, and they could have done that?
Maybe they never said when they found out about it really. So maybe they just caught wind of it that he was going to do it at the science fair. I mean, Reed made a point to say that he had never shown it off in public before or something or anything like that. And since those people already had Victor working on it, maybe they were just like the same person doing the same thing. I don't know.
You're making excuses for him.
I mean, I'm just saying like the stuff that you got really upset about, they made really clear. And then I think the first half of this movie was actually really solid. Like you mentioned multiple times that the
And
characters
then
do one
like
thing and then
the
they do something
character
entirely
development
different.
towards each other.
But your big point is that the characters do one thing and then they do something entirely different, which I don't think ever happens. I don't think characters like the Victor stuff, maybe his stuff did that, but I
And
don't
then
think
I
like
made it
Reed
most of a
or
point.
Ben or anybody like acts one way and does another. You mentioned that Ben, you didn't understand how he could go and join the military after like like the military they turn him into a weapon or something like that. You mentioned that you didn't
Right.
think he'd be a weapon, like that'd be against his principles or something.
Well,
Essentially,
and that's the thing. You don't know what kind of person he is, but they made him to be an ultimate killer, and I guess he was okay with that, where he killed 70 people on a mission.
but he wasn't okay with it. He was like laying in his bed, super
If
sad,
he
like,
if he
and he
wasn't
didn't want
okay
to
with
do
it,
it.
he had the ability and power to get away from them easily.
Did he
He
though?
even taunted them a couple times, like, hey, if you don't agree to this, I'm gonna beat you up. And they're like, oh, okay.
But they kind of showed in the beginning he's just like this meek character. That's why they had him get beat up by his little
The thing
brother
was, they
slapped him
didn't.
around.
My main problem with the movie is they didn't develop any of these characters. That I didn't see any kind of connection like between Ben and Reed. I understood they were friends, and Ben helped him out because his family owned a a garbage dump, and he got him a part this one time, and you're just made to believe for the next 7 years he continues to help Reed for some reason. They never say
Yeah,
like,
why do
oh
you
yeah,
think that's such a big stretch? I mean, the kid doesn't have any friends. He's like living with his parents in this like junkyard, and Reed also has no friends because he's a super nerd. And Ben, when the kid went to do his little thing, looked into his little presentation, looked down at the notes and the crazy stuff that Reed was writing, and he gave it like a look of like, oh man,
well they
this is
never say
really
like
cool.
what does Ben do with his life for the next 7 years, and then after it,
No, he works.
it's,
They show him at the his junkyard. That's what he's done with his life. He hasn't done anything.
well, I feel like they cut a lot of things out that actually showed what Ben. I mean, they showed like him playing baseball in the trailer. I never saw him do anything with that in the actual
There's like
movie.
a bunch of shit from the trailer that I felt I totally missed. I thought there was like a scene in the trailer where Thing jumps out of an airplane and goes to bust through a
Right,
building.
they
Like that
cut
wasn't in
that
there.
out too. I just feel like they. I don't know what was the purpose, what the purpose was, but they cut a lot of things out that may have helped develop these characters a little bit more. That may made me like, oh well, Ben, that's what he's into, and that's the kind of person he is. It might have made more sense if they included some more
I
scenes.
thought they like. I mean, they obviously could have gone much further, but they did just as much backstory on these characters as they did in a movie like Ant-Man or Avengers. Like in the beginning, I felt like the Ben and Reed relationship was fine. You knew Ben was living in a trailer park, had a tough life, was never gonna leave, and that's how they became friends. Like there's not like this weird jump, especially coming from like other movies in the same genre. It's weird that you jumped all over this one for like those kind of things, but not other movies. Like you said, it was really weird that Ben would follow his friend and go on this crazy adventure to space. What's the difference between that, him doing that, which I didn't think was that crazy because this guy just didn't do anything his entire life, right? Like he was just working at a
Well, yeah,
junkyard.
what does he do? He just
And
works
now
in a
his friend
junkyard.
is like, hey man, I got this crazy opportunity for you to do something that you'll never be able to do in your entire
And
life. And he's
that's
like,
the
fuck yeah, like I'd be fuck yeah. This is
well,
the
they
one
said
thing you worked on your whole childhood. It worked, and now you're like get to go to another planet. Like who wouldn't be all in on that?
well, and they also made it a point several times to say that Reed could have destroyed the Earth when he was 12 years old and playing with his experiments. He could have created a black hole and
Yeah.
took the Earth into non-existence, and then they get drunk as 18-year-olds or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, hey, screw that. Screw hiring NASA people to come in and do our mission or whatever.
Let's
We
do
built
shit
the thing. Why
ourselves.
don't?
That's cool.
But that doesn't happen to explore an entirely different dimension. I don't know if it's a different dimension, different planet. They're kind of vague on there because they call it Planet Zero. I would just think you'd want some kind of. I mean, how much training do NASA astronauts go through just to go into space?
I thought they did a
Years of
really
training.
good job of that because they're all sitting around drunk and they're all like, "Fuck Neil Armstrong," and like, "Screw this!" Like, I want to be the first one. They were all got like they're drinking. Reed gets really sad. He's like, "Oh man, that's right. I'm gonna be
And
that
where the
guy."
hell's security in this high
They
classified
have
government
clear,
place?
almost total clearance. You can see when he gets Ben and he's like, "He's with me," and that guy was like, "Oh, okay." It's like that scene made perfect sense to me, and I can't imagine like why Ben
It might
wouldn't
make
come along.
sense to you, but I just thought it was stupid.
How is that any stupider than the crew and Ant-Man going along with Ant-Man on this
They're
robbery to fight a
criminals.
supervillain, fucking B guy with super suit? How are
Well,
those
they
guys
had
like
a
see Ant-Man in his Ant-Man suit and they're like, okay, fuck it, let's go with Ant-Man.
well, they
There's
had a
no
criminal
difference.
bond between each other. And
Ben and Reed like built this thing together for like 7 years.
what did Ben do besides turning the on switch?
Who knows? Who cares? He got the parts. Maybe he knew how to like put things
Ben
together.
looked useless to me in this movie as far as like, hey, he's got
But
the
I just
science.
don't understand how
Ben put the
you
on switch on.
can give Ant-Man a pass on that. This is the exact same situation. A bunch of guys are following a superhero into a situation where there's a really dangerous outcome. It's the exact same thing.
Doing a heist, which those criminals have done together several times, is a little bit different than traveling to an alternate dimension and not really having any kind of clue of what to expect.
Is it though? When you're not doing a normal heist. You're going with a superhero, a guy that transforms himself into an ant, that you like a suit that you've never really seen in action before.
Well,
How is that like? How is that like any weirder?
those guys have done heists together.
But
They
you're not
trust each
doing a
other.
normal heist. You're like going to fight a supervillain in this crazy situation with a superhero. It's not the same thing. I just feel like you're like knocking this movie for like the wrong reasons. Like you're knocking it for areas that I don't think they had as big of holes as you're making out to be. And I don't. And so far, I don't think you've done a good job of explaining what like
Well, I
where
think
the
we just have
holes
different
are.
perspectives. I may have saw the movie differently than you did.
But I'm pointing out where you missed these things. I'm not saying
Right.
this is like
And
a different
your point
perspective. I'm just
doesn't
saying they made
necessarily.
it really. No, I'm saying they made it really clear because they did make these things really clear, and I feel like you missed them. Like there's
Well, if I missed
giant
them, then it
holes,
must have not made it clear.
but
It still
they're
doesn't.
like the easiest things in the world to see. Like you
Ben
see them
looks
if
like
it was
a
a Marvel
useless
movie.
person to me. The entire explanation of who that character is, and yet he's brought along to be Ben Reed's little sidekick, and he's brought along to travel to another dimension. That would never happen in a million years. And I know
And
it's
it wouldn't
trope.
have happened if they wouldn't have got drunk. Like if it would have been a normal day, like it totally would never have happened. Which is why they made the point to get them drunk. Like things you can get upset about that I think are even like worse that you also pointed out were Sue and her brother's relationship, which there is absolutely none. Like
Yes,
they did zero.
and I brought that. That was in my review where they
Yeah, I know.
had
That's what I'm saying. That's
the
one thing. That's
relationship,
one thing you
like
might have actually got from the movie and put it on the paper.
where they see it. Well, yeah, because there's so many characters that it takes time to connect all of them. But Sue is a stepsister to. She's adopted, and she's stepsister to Johnny. And it doesn't seem like they've seen each other much at all. Like Johnny seems like to do street racing a lot. I don't know what his
It's
motives
like
are
here's
for that.
Johnny. He's street racing. It's like
He's
what?
explained to be a master builder. He can build anything. He built his own car. Why he doesn't want to work with his dad when Sue wants to work with him has no problem doing it. It doesn't make total sense.
I wish they would have explained
Johnny's
that
just
more.
hot-headed, I guess.
Yeah, you're just like left to think that he's jealous. And that's pretty much it.
And the fact, like, oh, well, I better go work at Baxter Institute so I can get money to build a new car again. Like, really?
That was a big stretch. But I mean, it was a high school kid trying to get money to build a car. I mean, who
And I
knows?
feel
Maybe
like
it was summer vacation.
another thing they cut from the trailers, they showed him working on like a really cool looking car in the trailer, and in
Yeah.
the movie he was driving this junker that he built himself.
These trailers did not match the movie at all. Like there were so
Yeah.
many things in these trailers that didn't make the cut that is crazy.
And
Like that
then
was one.
I just feel like they cut a lot of different scenes out that were probably important scenes to this movie of building characters together. They could have maybe if they left one scene with Ben in there before turn thing, even though they didn't really call him things until the last second. But maybe there was one of those scenes where maybe I would have saw that scene and I was like, oh, it clicked for me that that's the kind of person that Ben is. But I didn't see that, and to me, what I saw didn't define who Ben was.
What were you missing from Ben to make you think that he would just be like a guy down on his luck looking for like something to give him
I thought he was
something to
just
feel important in life?
well, he had no reason to exist really, from what I
Yes,
saw.
exactly. Which is why when someone tells you you can do this important thing, you jump on it. Like that, getting upset about that just drives me nuts, Tristan. I mean, if you can't tell. But another thing that you mentioned was the relationship between Sue and Reed. So basically, I felt like Sue could have had like a bunch of dynamics. And you mentioned the way Ben potentially looked at her too. Like there
Right
could have
when
been
they
this
first
whole
saw each other,
angle.
Ben gave her like a weird glance, like, "Hey, who's this girl?"
Yeah,
And then Reed's conversations with Sue, they they teeter as far as whether it's maybe he's into her, maybe she's just playing around with him, maybe she has no interest whatsoever.
the
Like,
library scene was like
yeah, the
so
library
empty.
scene.
That scene actually pissed me off. There's a scene where she's putting in or taking out her headphones, right? And she has her headphones out, and then he says something, and she has them back in. I think that in the next cut, and it drove me fucking nuts.
There's some dumb line about, "Oh, what are you doing? Music." And she says the band
Like,
she's listening to. I'm like, "Oh, never heard of them." I don't
yeah,
know. It just seemed like
some of the
useless
banter was I thought
conversation.
really really good. Like I thought like some of the banter between them, all the jokes was really strong, and then sometimes there's stuff like that where it's just
And
like,
then
ugh.
there was I mentioned Victor's interest with Sue also. So you've got three people now, like all seem interested in Sue, but they don't like go any which way. Or you, it shows like they hinted at something, and then they're like, that
And
was
I think
nothing.
this is where we get the loss of Josh Trank potentially in the studio taking over for that last third of
Possibly.
the movie.
I don't know. Going another a big reason why I was so upset because going into this movie, all the actors were even saying in their publicity interviews, this is their team, they're a family together, and that's what the movie's about. And what I saw in the movie was not anything to do with the family. They were so far apart from each other. It, there were
I'm with
times
you.
where I thought Victor had a bigger connection towards Reed and Johnny than anything. And then they go, that was the 180 where then Victor separates himself again after he was already separated. Then he gets when he drinks with them. Like I
Hmm.
felt like, oh, maybe they can be friends, even though they seem jealous of each other. But maybe the competitiveness can bring them together at some point. And then they don't explore that at all. And then what happens when they go to the other dimension.
Yeah, that's where the press tour we were talking about them talking about being family, where I was really annoyed that they didn't know much about the movie and they hadn't seen the movie. Maybe they were talking about that because the movie that they actually filmed had a bunch of that shit that they didn't even
It's
know was cut.
possible.
Maybe that's why they weren't allowed to see the movie because their press release tour would have been a little different. They're all
I
idiots on the
just
tour anyway, but
I just felt like they cut so many things out of the movie. They had to have.
because like think about it, this movie was like an hour and 40 minutes long, right? Like every superhero movie is well over 2 hours, 2 hours 10, 15 minutes
I
these
think it was only
days.
90 minutes.
Yeah, maybe it was only 90, but like everything's over 2 hours these days. So there's so much stuff that was left on the table that could have been character development that we never got. That was really disappointing. The only
Eh,
time I ever felt like, oh man, these guys are a real team, this could be something, was the very last scene of the entire movie.
Right, and
And I
then
was like, oh shit, I want to see these guys again because it looks like there's something here. Like this cast is
well,
kind of
why
good.
did they take into the last 10 seconds for like Ben and Johnny to give each other a hard time or anything like that? Or like that's classic Fantastic Four. My my main problem is I don't think Fox can make a good Fantastic Four movie, like a legitimately good Fantastic Four movie. And they're saying they want to tie these characters over and do an X-Men crossover. I think that'd be an absolute disaster because they're gonna have to reboot X-Men to even get there, since right now the next X-Men movie is set in the '80s. So to get there, they'd have to fast forward a few 30
Well, these guys
years.
can just time travel.
I guess they could do that too. But I feel like they could have done much cooler things with Reed. He seemed more like a dork than really intelligent. I feel like Sue wasn't totally. They didn't define Sue that much. Like she was really good at computers, and she seemed to have a. I don't know where they were going with Sue really. Like she didn't want to give in to the government,
She was
but
really good at patterns. Pattern recognition was her thing. She was able to like read people and find
oh,
out where things are
and she
going.
built those containment suits that didn't really do their jobs.
True.
Since, so she's pretty bad at
She's
that.
a kid.
Yeah.
Kids doing kids things. But
Uh,
you also were really pissed
and
about the powers in general. Like you didn't think they used them very well, and the
well,
fact that they were like trained by the government pretty quickly.
were they trained or were they
I
just
mean,
like
they showed
go on?
Johnny shooting at targets and like taking down drones, and then they. I mean, one of my big problems with the movie was the 1 year jump. It's like I
Right.
didn't know enough about these characters to begin with, and now you give them something like these all new
They did a lot
powers.
of time jumps,
You give
and
you
that's
give them these all new powers and all new crazy things, and then you jump forward a year. So like this unbelievable thing happens to them, and then you're a year forward, and I have to like ask myself like what changed in the last year between the character I started to know and the character that just got these powers, and now how are they different? It's really weird. That whole jump was crazy.
it just seemed way too convenient. Also, like, oh, they had no clue like how to beat this unstoppable Doom, and they're like, hey, wait a second, maybe if we work together, we can do it.
They
It
kind of were like the world's ending. We got no choice. Let's try to do this. Let's all use our powers in interesting ways. You got the it's clubbering time or it's clubbering
well,
time.
and yeah, they had to wrap that up quickly since they put themselves into a corner, and they Doom was also a big letdown for me.
I mean, that
I,
whole Doom and the whole battle was a shit show.
yeah, just the look of Doom was awful. The look of a lot of these guys was pretty awful. Human Torch's flames were not so great
Wait, the
visually.
fire was totally cool. That was
Mm,
totally good fire.
I've seen better
I'm a
firing.
fire expert.
I've seen better firing Ghost Rider.
No way. That fire was actually pretty cool and it moved with them right. Like that was pretty solid fire. I don't know about the fire,
I
dude.
I
And
was
I
good
thought the
with
thing looked
Reed
pretty cool too.
stretchiness. Reed stretchiness was good. I felt like they could have, like, they showed him kind of badass, like taking out soldiers doing his stretchy thing. But
Yeah, that
then,
was pretty neat.
like, I felt like he could have probably been able to contain the thing when they were going toe to toe for each other.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, you've got Ben, who's just a big galoot, and then you've got Reed, a super intelligent person that in the last year he had to learn how to use his powers. That's another thing. He's wearing that containment suit for an entire year, right?
I felt like he was yeah, he
That's
was
one
down in
thing
the
that kind
heat
of
of
bothered me.
wherever he was, like wearing that suit. I thought that was really interesting that they showed him shapeshift his face. I thought that was pretty cool. I didn't know that was a power of his, to be honest.
Yeah, and then Sue's
Her invisibility.
invisibleness
That was kind
was
of cool because the scene,
cool.
what she did with the thing, I thought was interesting.
I just felt like Doom was the big letdown for me, and the
We got
fact,
spoiled by Secret Wars because Doom is so cool in Secret
well,
Wars.
even before Secret Wars, Doctor Doom is one of the best Marvel villains ever, and Fox has yet to do a good Doctor Doom in their 3 movies now. How many times can they attempt Doctor Doom and just absolutely make it a
What
disaster?
is Doctor Doom's superpower?
He's got okay. Well, first of all, he's got like equal intelligence to someone like Reed, so he's got that going for him.
So they did that right in this movie.
Right. I mean, for the movie, the whole telekinesis thing was an added thing. Uh, he's got the ability to like talk to machines and whatnot, and he's a master builder and all that. I just felt like and this was Josh Trank most likely, like they went way too sci-fi, and they literally stole things from other sci-fi movies like Scanners or The Fly, with the whole transformation thing with The Fly when they got their powers and the thing was all transforming out of rocks, and then Scanners with heads blowing up and whatnot, and like they even said way before the movie came out, like, yeah, we used Scanners and The Fly as inspiration, but they almost stole things scene for scene.
Yeah, I guess that is kind of shitty. The whole scene where he's blowing people's heads up was pretty crazy.
Right.
I didn't see that coming.
I mean, I did my review before the whole Josh Trank thing came out, where he said, "Yeah, I would have done movie was fantastic a year ago or whatever of what I was ready to release, but Fox changed it all, and then he deleted that tweet. But once you're on the internet, you're there, so people
Hmm.
saw it right away. All that stuff made me even more skeptical that Fox is capable of ever doing a good Fantastic Four movie. The fact that they hired a director, they didn't let him do his thing. Maybe whatever his cut of the movie, maybe that would have been a lot better than what we saw, because they did a patchwork job of this end product that obviously did not mesh well together with how they patched it together.
Yeah, the studios have interference all the time on movies. They come in and they make
Yeah,
the directors do cuts, so that's not too extraordinary. The fact that they potentially fired him
but they
right
supposedly
after
hijacked the
shooting Wrath,
movie.
like
They didn't say, "Hey, you're off the movie." They literally hijacked the movie allegedly, and
right when filming Wrath, they let him go basically, and then fucking
well,
did
Simon,
reshoots and all sorts of crazy shit.
and then well, he stayed on set though because he had to be on set because of the Directors Guild of America. They require that the director is on set, otherwise they could shut down production. But Simon Kinberg and Hutch Davis, producers. Simon Kinberg was one of the writers of the movie. He did X-Men movies. He's part of the Star Wars anthology movies. Simon Kinberg, and another connection to Star Wars, interesting enough, Josh Trank was off the Star Wars project during this whole post-production process of Fantastic Four. So I don't know if those two are tied together. That Simon Kinberg called up the Star Wars people and like, yeah, you probably don't want to work with this guy because he's not so great to work with. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's beside the point because none of that really matters, like, except for the fact that the studio potentially fucked up what could have been an interesting movie. But I still
I
think
just
you don't
felt like
think
they
there's anything in these characters that could make an interesting second movie. Like you don't think that Miles Teller and these guys could come together under the right direction? Because now, I mean, we don't know a lot about them, but we know enough where someone might be able to build something mildly interesting in this world.
I think they would have to show some drastic development. I mean, for the Thing, still, like, he was so mad at Reed for what Reed did to him of pulling him into this and turning into what he became. Like, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, they work together and he's okay with Reed all of a sudden.
I mean, Reed apologized, told him why he did it. He was going to try to help him, and that's maybe that was enough. I mean, he was like, I did this because I was going to go try to find a cure and fix you. That was like his
Mhm.
whole goal. He like knew he couldn't do anything in captivity.
I don't get why Ben stayed there. That was a
I
big
just
thing
don't
that bothered me.
understand.
Like, why would Ben stay there when he had like, if he was on these missions, he could easily go wherever he
But
wanted
that
to.
was the whole point of showing him get, I think, slapped around at his working in the junkyard and continuing to work in the junkyard after high
Oh,
school
and
was
they
that
butchered
he
its
had no
clobbering time thing. They butchered its clobbering
he
time.
he just had no he was like a weak guy and he was just like he just went with the flow and did what he did because he didn't know how to do anything better.
The fact that they
I
put the
don't think
back
that was a
history
stretch.
of the Thing's classic slogan, "It's clobbering time," and they linked it to his brother beating him up as a kid, and his brother would yell, "It's clobbering time," and then he later used that. Like, that was so
I didn't
terrible.
notice. I guess I didn't notice the connection between that in the beginning.
Ugh, it's just bad. Like, a big problem I
But
had
is
with
it a one bad?
I
I
may have
find it.
been
I have
harsher on it, but
find a
I feel
hard
like
time thinking
after
this is the
watching this movie,
worst superhero. After reading your top seven worst superhero movies, I don't know if this would make that list.
did you think the earlier Fantastic Fours were worse than this one?
Yes, because they
Because I
were.
felt
But
like
at
those
the
movies were
time, I
more
didn't
in
like them.
spirit of the Fantastic Four. They're cheesy as heck and
See, you
campy,
know what?
but
I liked the. I guess the one thing that I liked about this movie, and I went in this movie like everyone, just thinking this is going to be a giant turd. And the one thing that I actually enjoyed about this movie was that it didn't do all the same fucking comic book shit that we've been seeing over and over and
well,
over
it
again.
did for the last half hour.
Yeah, but that beginning, that first 45 minutes, I honest to God, like that first 30 minutes, 35 minutes, I was like, I don't understand how this is going to be a bad movie. Like, all this is so solid right now. Like, the little kid, the setup, the science, like, all that stuff. Up until the explosion and they got their powers, I was like, damn, they're making like a decent movie here. Then it went to shit.
Well, and for those first 45 minutes where I had a lot of issues, maybe I was nitpicking a little, but going into a movie I knew was going to be bad, I was trying to pay as close attention of things that did not make sense to me, and a lot of things I mentioned just did not make sense to me. And as a common sense kind of thing, like it just did not click of why he would do this or she would do that.
I feel like
Like,
I'm
why
Reed
would they be
Richards and you're
talking?
Ben Grimm right now. My superhuman intelligence in this weirdly written movie. I don't know, man.
And at the end of the movie, I was mad that this is what they came up with, and that this is what they think Fantastic Four is. And going into the future of Fantastic Four, I don't think Fantastic Four is relevant right now. I mean, obviously it's not relevant in comics because they canceled the series. And sure, it's wars going on between Fox and Marvel and whatnot, between money over rights to merchandise and all that craziness. But I feel like the only reason Fox made this movie is because if they didn't, then they would have lost the rights.
How could Marvel do a better job? Marvel,
And
oh, you know what Marvel's gonna do? They're gonna turn it into like what they always do. It's gonna be like this comedy action movie. Is that gonna
yeah,
work?
well, that's the thing. I don't think if the rights go back to Marvel somehow, after if they don't make a movie in 7 years, the rights go back to Marvel. I don't think Marvel should do a Fantastic Four movie. They've been successful with their own properties. Guardians of the Galaxy is a giant new franchise of theirs. I think they are on to new movies that are going to be successful, like Black Panther, Doctor Strange, Inhumans. I don't think they need Fantastic Four. Fantastic Four is outdated. Fantastic Four was originally created in 75 years ago. Well, Human Torch was created 75 years ago, but really it hit mainstream. Fantastic Four formed a good 50 years ago
Mm-hmm.
during the space race in the 60s, and it was created because people wanted to read about people going to space because the U.S. was doing the exact same thing in real life. How does that relate to nowadays? Like, Fantastic Four just isn't relevant nowadays. When way back when it was relevant, it was a good series. A lot of characters made their first appearance in the book of Fantastic Four. Black Panther originally made his appearance in Fantastic Four. There's been numerous amounts of different members of the Fantastic Four that aren't the core four that you know. Like, they've done a lot of crazy, awesome things throughout comics, and Fantastic Four was originally created to be the answer to DC's Justice League. Like, Fantastic Four was big for Marvel. Nowadays, not so big because times change, and
Preaching to the choir, man. I don't think anyone's shit on the Fantastic Four harder than I have on Adapted over and over again, even before this movie was announced. Dude, I just don't like the character. I don't like the stretchy guy. I don't like any of them. I just don't think they're. I don't like them.
I mean, they can be cool characters. I mean, you've been
They're
reading
like
Secret
my
Wars.
least favorite characters in like all the video games that they're like. I just dislike them. They just always like they just seem like antiquated and just like they feel like my dad would love the Fantastic Four. Actually, my grandpa would probably be like, dude, the Fantastic Four, they're the fucking shit. But I thought this movie did a decent job of like making me go, maybe I was wrong for hating them.
If I wasn't so nitpicky, I could have possibly raised it to a 2. But I was just not happy after watching this movie, and I was just disgusted with that's what they gave to audiences.
Is it the worst comic book movie of all time?
No, it's not the worst comic book movie of all time. Catwoman is by far #1 worst comic book movie of all time. Nothing will ever beat the worstness, the awfulness of that movie.
You had the Fantastic Four Silver Surfer as number 4 on your worst comic book movies of all time.
And I
That
didn't
would
even
make
realize
this,
I put that as #4, Fantastic Four, #4.
Would
I
that
didn't
make
realize
this number 3 or number 2? Would this go above Green Lantern or above X-Men Origins Wolverine? Because I think personally think it's better than both. That was your list, but I mean X-Men Origin was a shit show.
Yeah, I would
Green
still
Lantern
keep Green Lantern and Wolverine in their spots. For me, I kind of thought the earlier Fantastic Four movies did a better job of showcasing what the Fantastic Four were.
Which were cheese dick.
They were cheesy, campy as hell movies, but I felt like they did a better job of telling a story, even though it was a cheesy story. And they still screwed up Doom in that one. But the fact that they had a second chance to maybe do something cool with Doom, and it's funny how many changes they made throughout the process of they're going to do Victor Damashek as his name, and then they changed that.
What happened to hashtag Doom? That's what I was really looking forward to.
Yeah, they made him out like and the actor even said, Doom is going to be a big time hacker and everything, but he may have had the ability to hack things,
Man,
but
someday
he was like all on board with them. I don't know. they missed the boat with so many things. And to go back to your original question, yes, I kind of answered it before, but yes, I would put this as my least favorite Fantastic Four movie. I put the other ones a little higher than this one, even though they were what they were.
Wow. Because you said in the other about your Fantastic Four, honestly, it's hard to say one positive thing about this film.
And I made it a theme in my top 7 of worst comic book movies. It was a common theme for me that I thought when the first movie is bad and they make a sequel, the sequel is going to be worse than the first movie, typically. And that's at least that's how I viewed a lot of those movies.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like a shitty first one usually
Like
leads to a shitty
the sequel to
second.
Ghost Rider was absolute awfulness.
Yeah, I totally get where you're going. So you gave it a 1. It's the first #1 on the site. It's the worst comic book movie we've ever reviewed. I
I'm
didn't
sure we
review
can
the
come up with
movie,
something worse that eventually.
so I would probably give it a 2 or a 3, and I'd really have to sit down in the dark room
If I
with
was in a
just my
better mood, I
memories.
may have given it a 2 when I was doing my review. But
Don't say
I
that.
did my review instantly after I saw the movie. I threw my thoughts on in a computer right away, and that's how I felt. I stand by my 1, and
And moving forward, we're gonna make you sit on your reviews for 3 days before coming to your crazy fucking review scores. I don't. We stand behind everything Tristan does, and we're okay with him giving this a 1 on this occasion, even though it's probably not warranted.
well,
But you know what? There are 2 other members of the team that have probably got some questions for Tristan based on this one, and you can listen
trying
to
to.
them this Friday morning on Adapted because we are definitely going to talk a little bit more about the Fantastic Four on Adapted this week.
And those are 2 guys I don't think that will ever see the movie.
No, I mean you gave it. You shit all over this
Well,
movie.
I don't think because of
I don't
my
think
review.
anyone that comes to the site and saw this review is gonna go see the movie.
Well, no one
You
did see the
probably
movie this
played
past
into
weekend, so
well, your review probably played into the movie, only getting like 29, losing the Mission Impossible. Now the comic book movie
well,
that didn't open #1. I was getting ready to be like Fantastic Four beat Ant-Man, bitch. I knew that wasn't gonna happen, but still.
even Amazing Spider-Man 2 destroyed.
I don't know. We'll end this
Amazing
with
Spider-Man.
your final last word. It's time to have the Fantastic Four hang up their boots.
It is time.
Thanks for joining us on this Talkback, everybody. For Tristan Wisher, I'm Jason Onecki, and we will be around soon with another one of these things. We'll beat up Tristan again.
Can't wait.
Bye.
See ya.